for many people and many businesses, we've been reporting on this all year. It's not been a great and productive year, but there is one industry that seems to have done rather well.
Indeed, this means there could be, we're talking about the gaming industry, as it were, and this means there could be more opportunities for developers on the continent. Let's discuss more on this with Nicholas Hall from Interactive Entertainment South Africa, and he joins us live via Skype from Cape Town. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us. So much has been written about the explosion in the gaming industry as a result of lockdown and people not being able to really go anywhere and do much other than what's at their disposal in their kitchens, in their lounge, and indeed in their bedrooms, as the case may be. I mean, the numbers are quite staggering. One article I read said that the global gaming industry, and that includes consoles and mobile gaming, has exploded under lockdown and is expected to top $160 billion this year alone. What have you noticed about this uptick, as it were, in the gaming industry, especially locally?
Yeah, so I think that generally the lockdown has been good for the creative arts in general, but gaming has certainly seen a massive uptick in terms of our user bases. So if you look at almost across the board, regardless of where the games are being played, be it on mobile, PC, or console, concurrent users, so that's the number of people playing a game at a single time, has kind of consistently gone up. We used to see sort of on our graphs that you get peaks at around the weekend, and that completely leveled out to like just be consistently a lot of people playing. Locally, we've also seen an uptick. The local industry is relatively evenly split between what we would call services work, so developers who are making games for international developers as part of like outsourced work, either as programmers or artists, and then guys making their own IP. Both sectors have done fairly well. Because so for the guys who are making their own IP, obviously their own games are getting played more, so they're seeing more concurrent users, more people are buying their games, people have more time, so they're daring to be a little more experimental with what they're wanting to play. And South Africa doesn't traditionally make what we would call AAA titles, which are the equivalent, I suppose, of your Hollywood blockbusters. We make much smaller niche titles. And because people have more time, they're being a bit more experimental with what they can play. And so a lot more of our titles are being picked up. For the services guys, we've been marching on, obviously. Games are still being produced and people are trying to make the most of the fact that people are not being available. So there's been a steady stream of work coming through, which has also been fantastic.
Nicholas, apart from the kind of money that's being used to develop gaming for various platforms, it's astonishing how many years ago, Marcelle might remember this as well, perhaps when your older brother or a friend of yours was sitting and playing a PlayStation all day and their mother would chase them out, go play in the garden.
Super Mario
You're wasting your time. You're playing Super Mario Brothers. I had a Nintendo something. But it's no longer just a hobby these days. There is money to be made whether you're an amateur, and as far as getting into the professional ranks are concerned, there is major money involved in this. I throw one name into this. The game of Fortnite is one of the most highly paid sporting events in the entire world. It's astonishing how it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment that much on esports. It's not really my field of expertise, but definitely esports has started. It is going from strength to strength. As you say, for many years it was kind of seen as this fringe activity, but with games becoming more mainstream in general, the comment that you made there, I kind of think underlies it, is that it used to be considered a thing that only maybe boys would do, it only children would do, and that's certainly not the case. I mean, everyone plays games. The average gamer is a woman between the ages of 30 and 35. So, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, everyone is playing games. And I think with that change, with that adjustment that has become normalized as an activity, it only makes sense that the viewership and sort of the making the game, treating the game like a sport, treating games like sports is only the logical conclusion. And so that's great to see. I mean, there's been other massive multiplayer titles like Fortnite that have also really seen success under lockdown. There was a game called Fall Guys, which became a huge success overnight. And even small, again, like small indie kind of niche titles. There was a game that was out for 3 years, I think, called Among Us. And all of a sudden, under lockdown, because people needed a way to connect with their friends, they needed to be able to kind of simulate real life again. This game got picked up, and after not really having much activity for many years, it's kind of blown up to be one of the largest concurrently played games on Steam, which is fantastic.
Now, Nicholas, there's a number that's being thrown around that 11 million people in South Africa play online video games. Now, whether that number is correct or even close to being correct, that number is indeed staggering. In the marketing world, in the product placement world, in the advertising world, are businesses taking note of this massive market and how diverse it actually is? I mean, we're talking about boys and girls, teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s even, people with kids. I mean, it really is, it's a great market for anybody to sink their teeth into. But are they, or are they unsure of how steady that market is?
I think the trick has been, no, definitely, look, they definitely are aware, and we're starting to see a lot more interest in using games as a mechanism for advertising, be it through something like esports, which would then just follow sort of traditional sports branding, like you would sponsor a cricket team or a rugby team, or sponsor the events themselves. What has been a fairly common mainstay, and it's been like this for a while, is specifically branded games for your product, what we would call an adver game. And those are often done sort of in conjunction with a marketing campaign or sort of a promotional competition. So that's when you get a small, say, mobile title built specifically for what you're doing. And then obviously the big one is in-game advertising. And there's two ways that traditionally has kind of taken place. The one is very much, again, like you pay product placement. You pay to have your game in sort of a AAA budget type game. This is not uncommon, especially in the sports titles. So if you think about the FIFA series, because they're trying to simulate real life, they very much try to get all the sponsors who sponsor the major football events to, buy product placement within their games. Yeah,
and that's as far as the sponsorship is concerned. It's fascinating. It makes me wonder as well about just in the last 30 seconds with you, if you can. Marcelle and I are both sitting here with our phones. I imagine the easiest market to tap into, whether it's to develop a game, to advertise on the game, or simply to play a game. Consoles are expensive. I don't even know what they cost, but they're a lot of money. But is your mobile phone, isn't it? I mean, how big is that in South Africa, considering the kind of phone you need and the kind of data that you need? As a final question to you.
So it's really interesting. So yes, from a consumer perspective, absolutely, mobile is definitely the way to go. But for developers, it's almost inhospitable. Mobile is incredibly difficult to build for and get into. So you'll see that from a development perspective, the majority of our developers are building for PC and console just because it's so much easier to get into, both from a terms of discoverability, people being able to find your product, and from the ability to monetize. So there is this, in South Africa at least, and I suppose sub-Saharan Africa, there's this discrepancy where we're not really building games for the local audience per se, because we're not primarily building mobile games. But that is due to sort of the economics of it. Mobile is an incredibly difficult area to get into. But we do have we have a fairly consistent local user base, which is great. But again, it's due to the games that we actually make. We're not going to massively get broad appeal yet. But we've got a number of studios who are setting rather ambitious targets for themselves in terms of the games that they're going to be playing. And I don't think it'll be long games that they're making, sorry. And it won't be long before we see something akin to a AAA game coming from South Africa. And that will be very exciting when that does happen.
Fascinating indeed. Thank you so much. Nicholas Hall from Interactive Entertainment South Africa, really schooling us on the world of gaming and where it's going in South Africa. And it sounds like exciting times.